AFP True Crime.
The Monster of Florence returns to tell its story with new force and an unsettling precision in the Netflix series directed by Stefano Sollima. As a criminologist, I see in this production a thorough exploration not only of the facts, but also of the social and psychological context that has spanned decades of investigations and fear. The series does not limit itself to recounting the gruesome murders, but delves into the sense of collective terror that swept through Florence and the surrounding countryside. Through an intense and detailed narrative, the mechanisms of a manhunt emerge, one that forced investigators, magistrates, and citizens to confront an invisible and elusive evil. The dynamics of justice, the contradictions of misdirection, and the difficulties in shedding light on a fragmented truth become protagonists alongside the crimes themselves. The Monster of Florence is not just a criminal, he is the embodiment of deep anxieties, unresolved fears, and a system that faltered in the face of horror. Highly recommended. Between 1968 and 1985, in the countryside around Florence, someone killed couples who were parked in cars or in isolated places. 8 double murders, 16 victims. A red thread connects them. A .22 caliber pistol with Winchester H-series ammunition, and in several cases, the subsequent mutilation of the female body with a bladed weapon. It's the signature that turns a trail of blood into a unique case in Italian criminal history, the Monster of Florence. Edges of the city. Grass slowly and quietly begins swallowing the cracked, faded asphalt. The city, in the gentle hush of evening, breathes softly and quietly, as if someone, somewhere, turns off the sound. He doesn't hunt faces, he hunts the relationship. A curve with no streetlights, a car seat as an altar. The gunshot is to silence, the blade to rewrite evil. A moralist who exposes, a pornographer of control. He punishes what he desires. The film is faceless, a domestic of the territory, director of the clearings. He knows the blind spots, the paths of branches in the parks. Geography is prey, the map is confession. He repeats the ritual in a loop to relieve the pressure, to exclude, to possess, to silence. 3 verbs held in a breath waiting to end. Anti-intimacy, director of silence. He writes the scene and then leaves it outside of time. To exclude, to possess, to silence. The city sleeps, he moves to disappear. Anti-intimacy, director of silence. He turns off the light. Only his choice remains. The first episode dates back to 1968, in the Signa area. A couple is killed in their car. A child, the woman's son, wanders through the night until he asks for help. At the time, the victim's husband was convicted for that crime. It ends there. But years later, when the trail starts again, ballistic analyses will link those bullets to the subsequent murders. 1968 becomes the prologue. Let's jump to 1974. Another couple, another secluded setting. The methods point to an attacker who surprises, shoots, and isolates the female body. From this point on, after several years of silence, the machine of death starts turning again with a disturbing regularity. 1981, 2 double murders. Moonless night, dirt road, hedges, the chirping of crickets that sounds like the rustling of film. A Fiat 127 stopped mid-breath. Half an hour stolen from adult life, from going home, from thinking about tomorrow. In the provinces, people know what it means to make love in a car. A pact of invisibility. Here it breaks. It comes the way breakdowns do. Without warning. Without unnecessary noise. He studied the gaps. The curves where the beam of light doesn't reach. The hour when the farmers have turned off their stoves. He draws closer. He presses his shadow against the car body. He cuts through the scene with a sharp gesture. The blows are a switch. The world goes dark. Love shatters into procedures. He doesn't shout. She has no time for questions. This is where the direction begins. No grand theater, no Baroque signature, only the conviction that someone else's intimacy must be taken, corrected, punished. The knife is not a profession, it's the edit of the body, an imposed montage, a forced no thrust into a story that never belonged to it. The field holds its breath, the trees serve as an audience that cannot see. The earth records steps, turns, hesitations. A plant object becomes the final insult, a symbolic wound. This is not surgery. It is control tainted by resentment. The female body ceases to be a person and becomes a stage. The male, already a forced lock, remains a function. The relationship has been erased and rewritten in the language of power. Then, the technical time of the exit. Remove presence. Leave traces that speak without a signature, the moved bag, a detail shifted, the position that forces whoever comes after to see what he wants to be seen. This is not a show, it's an email without a sender sent to the city. I decide what intimacy is here. That night, Rabata invents a new lexicon. Couples learn the alternative routes. Fathers try their keys earlier, mothers pretend not to know, the dirt road loses its innocence and becomes an unspoken word. From tomorrow, distant parking lots will have a different shadow. From tomorrow, the country air will smell of surveillance. Pasquale and Stefania are not just a case, they are the point where a human algorithm takes shape. Neutralize, separate, possess. The repetition is already written, even if no one knows it. Here the ritual gains rhythm, here the author realizes he can return. The province feels a click in its mind and doesn't know what to call it. They will call it landscape, caution, bad luck, but it's just direction. And when the first flashing light cuts through the darkness, when hushed voices measure the distance between what happened and what can be told, this stark truth will remain. In Rabata, love was interrupted and replaced with a private rule. That is where the grammar of terror is born. That is where the margins learn to speak their new language. June 81. Rovetta Scandici. Smell of resin and dust. A small road that cuts diagonally through the darkness. Inside the car, Giovanni and Carmela, a parenthesis of the world suspended between the branches. The province knows that breath. A silent pact of invisibility. Here it breaks. It comes without drama, no scream, no threat, only calculated distance. A foot placed where the gravel doesn't crunch, a silhouette pressed against the metal. The .22 caliber returns, the conservative instrument, the preserved ritual. The shots are a switch, neutralized. The silence afterwards is a void that demands direction. The car doors tell of movements. The air tells of an arm guiding the scene. The relationship splits into functions. He is a resolved obstacle. She becomes the place of control. Separate. The blade enters like an editor. It's not a profession, it's an inner script. There's no surgery, there's possession. The gestures do not seek spectacle, they seek authority over the narrative. The signature becomes clearer on the female victim, as if the body had to bear an end title that no one asked for, to be possessed. The forest holds its breath. The leaves do not make an audience, they make a screen. The smallest objects become cues for direction. What to look at, what to ignore. It is not fury, it is editing. Quick entry, clean exit. Reduced exposure, restoration of darkness. Meanwhile, the city registers the change in tone without finding the words. On the news desk, this night seems like an event. In reality, it is a grammar. Consistent caliber, consistent sequence, consistent geography. Neutralize, separate, possess. Florence painfully realizes that this is not an isolated flash. It is a method that has found a home on the margins. And from tonight, the margins have a new alphabet. 1982, another one. June 19th, 1982. Bacchiano, Montespertoli, a summer that keeps the windows open and lowers its guard, a road that bends between the fields, the edge of a ditch like a pencil mark. Inside the car, Giovanni Foggi and Carmela Denuccio left room for the outside world. Here instead are Paolo Mainardi and Antonella Migliorini. The province knows the pact. Invisibility, a few minutes stolen from life. Here the pact is broken. He arrives as always. Dry, determined, with the ground already memorized. He chooses the blind spot. He touches the metal with his gaze before his hand. The first act is to silence. Caliber 22. The short sound that turns off the room. Neutralized. But something jams. Paolo tries to exit the scene, turns the key off instinct, the car swerves, gravel flies, the ditch becomes a trap, the escape crumbles within a few meters, the script that usually flows here screams friction. The planned order must be redone under pressure, so the ritual splits. On one side, the urgency to close what has been opened, on the other, the need to regain control. A .22 caliber as a conservative signature, but the second half of the job loses its usual coldness. Antonella becomes the site of the act that reasserts authority and at the same time measures the frustration of an imperfect sequence. There is no surgery, there is possession, and there is haste. The countryside listens without speaking. The smallest objects tell of a disrupted direction, doors moved, positions that hint at a choreography left unfinished. The distant sirens, the headlights, the low voices that will arrive later will find traces that resemble an incomplete message. But the language is the same as before. Neutralize, separate, possess. Only tonight the metronome skipped a beat. From here on, the news report stitches things back together. Caliber 22. A marginal place, a secluded couple, a coherent geography. The expected mutilation does not occur, not out of mercy, but due to friction, to risk, because the car in the ditch changed the timing of the scene. And this fracture, precisely this one, is the clearest proof that this is not blind fury, but a method that falters when the environment reacts. Baccagliano teaches us a painful lesson. The ritual is powerful, but it is not omnipotent. It thrives on favorable spaces, timing, and silences. When even one of these falters, the script is shortened. Yet the mark remains. Caliber .22. A freeze frame on the edge. A method that does not seek spectacle, but demands ownership of the narrative. Even when it slips from their grasp. 1983 again. September 9th, 1983, Giogoli. Low mist over the fields, a Volkswagen van parked where the darkness acts as a curtain. Inside, Jens Uwe Rusch and Horst Wilhelm Meyer. Foreigners, but the margins speak no language. It only recognizes the setting. From a distance, they look like a couple. That's enough. He arrives as always dry and unemotional. He chooses the blind spot, measures the breadth of the night, places his steps where the gravel doesn't protest. The first move is a switch, a .22 caliber 7 shots that close off the room. No theatrics, just function, neutralize. Then the quick check, the geometry of the interior, the bodies, the hair, the clothes. The perceptual error reveals itself. Not a man and a woman, but two men. The planned ritual is stripped to the bone, no display of position. No blade to rewrite anything. Here, possession is unnecessary or simply not useful. Just separate them, that's all. The scene remains sparse in gestures. The van is like a box that has lost its story. The field is like an audience that never saw the show. Small movements, almost nothing. A clean exit, a return into the darkness. To possess the story tonight means not adding anything. Giogoli teaches this. The obsession isn't the passports, it's the architecture of intimacy. The setting matters more than identity. If the setting deceives, the ritual is reduced to the bare minimum. Caliber 22, margin, perfect timing, neutralize, separate, and disappear. The grammar is the same, just written in shorter lines. 1984, July 29th, 1984, Vicchio. A dirt road as long as a held breath. A panda at the end of the dusty corridor. Summer that stretches out time, open windows, naive trust in the edges. Claudio Stefanacci and Pierontini. A parenthesis of the world, two quiet voices inside a rectangle of glass. Here, the pact of invisibility breaks. The entrance is the same as always. Dry, calculated, devoid of theatrics. Steps where the gravel does not sing. Profile pressed against the metal the right distance. The first gesture is a switch. Caliber 22. The darkness grows darker, neutralize. Then the technical silence in which the director is in control. The relationship splits into functions. Him as an obstacle already dealt with, her as the place of control. The scene shifts by just a few centimeters but changes meaning. The second half of the work begins, the most personal one. The blade enters like an editor, not as a profession. It is not surgery, it is possession. It is writing imposed on another's body to reaffirm a private law over intimacy. To separate, to possess. The smallest objects become punctuation marks, a bag moved, a detail turned. The position that forces the gaze of whoever will arrive. The countryside, an unwitting accomplice, absorbs without speaking. No baroque, no blind fury, a method that becomes more explicit. a signature that demands to be read. The signature is not a single gesture, it is a sum of micro decisions that say, "This scene is mine." Vicchio teaches the crescendo. When the internal pressure rises, the author does not raise his voice, he raises the clarity of the ritual. Caliber 22, consistent geography, the long times of the season, the same grammar applied with greater sharpness. The city downstream stops looking for chance and starts to recognize the method. Neutralize, separate, possess. Here the pattern is not just recognizable, it has become didactic. Brief exit, minimal exposure, return to darkness. What remains are a dirt road, a panda that won't start, two names that should not be associated with silence. It's a blunt message carved into the night. Here, intimacy is decided by those who know how to use space, time, and fear as tools. As long as the ritual holds, as long as the map protects, then only dust and hushed voices remain. Finally, 1985. An end that is not the end. September 8, 1985. Scopetti, San Casciano. A sparse forest, scattered rubbish, a tent as a makeshift room. Jean-Michel Cravicvili and Nadine Morio. The countryside here doesn't make poetry, it makes a screen. The fabric is a curtain pulled in half. This is the last time the rite will be performed in public. The entrance is the usual one, dry, measured, already decided. Steps where the ground does not betray. Short breath, the right distance. The first gesture is a switch, a 22 caliber. The cloth opens, darkness closes in, neutralized. Then the brief chaos that demands direction. A tent is not a car, the edges escape in every direction. Jean-Michel tries for the woods, stumbling among scrap metal and black branches. The chase ends after just a few meters. Nadine stays, and with her, the second half of the job, not a profession, but possession. The blade enters like an editor and imposes its own grammar, to separate, to possess. The smallest objects become punctuation, fabric shifted, a suggested path, the scene forced to tell what he wants to be seen. There is no baroque, there is control. And then, in cold blood, the most authorial act, the mailing. A fragment sent to the law to reaffirm paternity and direction. Not a spectacle, but copyright. Scopetti is a fierce summary. Caliber 22, a marginal place, quick entry, clean exit, signature on the female body, message delivered afterwards. The province understands the whole sentence. Here someone decides what intimacy is and when it must die. It is the last known act, not the end of the inner story. From here on, the silence does not resemble redemption, it resembles exhaustion. What remains is the map, the woods, the tent, two names that should never have learned this language, and three verbs planted in the ground like stakes: neutralize, separate, possess. Still in the Florentine air, still summer nights or fair weather. When staying secluded seems easier and more dangerous. 1985 is the point of no return. A couple of foreign tourists is attacked in the Scopetti area. Shortly after, a package arrives at the prosecutor's office containing a fragment of the victim's breast. It is a direct chilling communication, revealing control of the scene, risk management, and a desire to dominate the narrative. And also the last killing attributed to the monster. What was the modus operandi? Choice of peripheral locations, generally known to those who live in the countryside. A sudden approach, a silent and precise firearm. Then the knife with mutilations aimed at striking identity and sexuality. In several cases, the killer takes away anatomical parts, trophies. This is behavior that doesn't serve to mislead, but to signify. In criminological terms, the gun is a tool of efficiency, the knife is a tool of expression. The perpetrator feels something that goes beyond simply eliminating the victim. He stages an idea of femininity to annihilate and possess. The investigation spans different seasons and leads. The first is the so-called Sardinian lead, because it re-examines the 1968 murder and the victim's relationships within a small circle of fellow countrymen. It's a lead that clarifies the context but doesn't pin down the perpetrator of the serial murders. In the 1990s, Pietro Pacciani enters the scene, a farmer from Mugello with a record of violence. He was convicted at first instance as the monster, acquitted on appeal. The trial was annulled by the Supreme Court and sent back for a new trial. He died before it was over. From a judicial standpoint, there is no final verdict against him. What remains are documents, clues, inconsistencies, and unresolved controversies. Then come the so-called snack companions, Giancarlo Lotti and Mario Vanni. Their contradictory and often recanted statements fuel the theory of a group, not a single perpetrator. They are convicted as accomplices in some of the murders, with sentences that have become final. According to the justice system, there is criminal responsibility. But for part of the public and those who have studied the case, the question remains, do those convictions really explain the entire cycle of the 8 double murders and their ritual signature? Meanwhile, other leads emerge, some more credible than others. The theory of a lone perpetrator familiar with the area, that of multiple perpetrators at different times using the same weapon, and even a theory involving outside masterminds. Respectable professionals are called commissioning anatomical parts. Some of these avenues lead to collateral proceedings and further acquittals. None of them provide a judicial truth that is fully shared. What do we know with reasonable certainty? Setting aside the more fanciful theories, first there is a key weapon, a 22 LR, which has never been found. The comparison of the rifling links at least 7 double murders from 1974 to 1985, and possibly even the one in 1968. The weapon is the forensic technical linchpin. Second, the attacker or group of attackers is very familiar with the habits and geography of the Florentine countryside. They know how to move, how to arrive and disappear. They choose escape routes. They don't improvise. Third, the post-mortem component is consistent and distinctive. The mutilations are not an act of concealment, they are the message. Fourth, the investigation suffered from conflicts between departments, information leaks, issues in evidence management, and problems with the profiles of some witnesses. This is not an alibi for the killer, but a factor that complicated the search for the truth. And the victim? They were young, often very young. Couples seeking privacy in their cars or out in the countryside. The choice is not random. Less protection, limited ability to react, isolated setting. Each name carries with it a stolen life and broken family. In one case, a child survives and walks through the night looking for someone willing to listen. That detail, beyond the paperwork, shows what was left behind. Where are we today? The convictions of Lati and Vanni for complicity closed a part of the judicial story. Pacciani's case was left unresolved by his death. The weapon was never found. There is no conclusive genetic evidence from the time that would decisively reopen the case. For many scholars, the case, both in terms of its full authorship and the ultimate reason behind that ritual, remains unsolved. What does this case teach us? That serial murder can hide in a familiar territory without cinematic masks, exploiting routines and shadowy areas. That investigations require real cooperation, impeccable chains of custody, less storytelling, and more method. And that a signature is not a whim, but the perpetrator's need to declare themselves omnipotent over another's body. Understanding this helps to read the scene with both coldness and respect. FX. The wind through the trees, then the chirping of cicadas fades away. The monster of Florence is still a burning case file. 16 lives cut short, a gun with no owner, and a country that has learned the hard way how easy it is to cause a stir and how difficult it truly is to achieve justice. When we say that name, let's remember that it's not a character, it's a void. And in those voids, investigators must place facts, not suggestions, out of respect for those who can no longer speak. This is not the portrait of a monster, it's the atlas of an anti-intimacy. I take the floor, I take time, I take the measure of his habits. He doesn't hunt people, he hunts relationship. He goes where the city unravels, where grass eats away at the asphalt, where couples believe they're invisible. There he silences instinct and brings order to his chaos. The relationship is his crime scene. He arrives dry, doesn't shout, doesn't threaten. He closes the door to the world with a technical, swift gesture. First he neutralizes, then he manages. The blow is a switch. It turns off. The blade is an editor. It rewrites. It's not surgery. It's not a craft. It's ritual control. The obsession is always the same: to silence otherness and possess the narrative. The female body becomes the site of this control, the man, the lock to be opened. The hatred is not toward women in the abstract, it's toward the couple that excludes him. Pornographic moralism. It punishes what it desires, displays what it condemns. It knows the edges, the dirt roads, the ditches, the laybys without streetlights. It knows where the social noise fades and where schedules become predictable. It is not military in the novelistic sense of the word. It is domestic to the territory. Conservative in its tools, obsessive in its routines. Geography is its invisible cameraman. It doesn't stage complicated theaters. It's the map that does the dirty work. Its signature is not a signature, it's an inner metronome. When the pressure rises, mutilations appear, and at times the need to communicate with chance through selective deliveries, small challenges to the law. When the pressure drops, frugality returns. This doesn't tell of an evolution of intelligence or an evil genius. It tells of an internal thermostat that switches on and off with private stressors: work, health, emotional failures, low intensity humiliations that ferment in daily life. It's not a spectacle, it's self regulation. Victimology, when read straightforwardly, doesn't look for names, it looks for environments. That half hour in the car out of the way, that curve with the hedge, that summer when you let your guard down. The man serves to prevent or allow access. The woman becomes the place of symbolic possession. It's not a hunt for female identity in itself, it's the denial of someone else's relationship, each time reenacted to temporarily restore his control. Organized or disorganized? It's a lazy question. His organization is situational. He is quick to enter and orderly in his exit. In between, he experiences the emotional storm that he must manage through ritual. He is capable of patience, but not of gratuitous creativity. He doesn't invent, he repeats. He doesn't improvise, he adapts. Consistency of caliber is not a technical fetish, it's a functional superstition. Changing the tool would change the ritual, and the ritual is what holds him together. Narcissism, yes, but hidden. No theatrical phone calls, no monologues into the recorder. He prefers directing to being on stage. When he sends something, he does it like stamping a script coldly to claim authorship of the story. He wants to be the author, not the actor. The actor receives applause, the author receives control. The city around is not just a backdrop, it's an unwitting accomplice. The legends, the wild theories, the scapegoats, the trials by public opinion. They are useful smokescreens. The social investigation becomes white noise under which he can keep doing what he knows how to do. The more the crowd shouts genius, the more he just needs to repeat his routine. He is not a genius, he is a worker in the shadows with a limited but steady output. And real workers know one thing: the assembly line stops when a part breaks, not when you run out of imagination. False myths dismantled one by one. He is not a surgeon playing at operating in the woods. His precision is intermittent. It speaks of private practice, not professional skill. He is not an invisible commando. He moves where he has muscle memory of the terrain, not in unfamiliar territory. He is not someone who found goodness in recent years. There is no redemption, only consumption. The body ages, eyesight fades, risks add up, and alarms go off sooner. Exiting the scene can resemble a pathological satiety or technical wear and tear. You don't need an arrest to silence a ritual. Sometimes entropy is enough. For him, time is a material. He prefers warm seasons, mild time slots, predictable social calendars. He prepares without preparing, maps, observes, reviews, returns to the same corridors of land until they become home. Mobility is short, the philosophy is simple. Do the most with the least, minimize exposure, enter and exit like a draft of air. Caution doesn't stop him, it structures him. Now I narrow the profile down to the bone. Male, peri-urban, and ordinary daytime life, functional but not deep relationships, private space cultivated like a den, naive technical skills but repeated until they become automatic, paraphilias as a means of control, sadistic moralism, director like narcissism. He grows old with the case, and with the case, he fades away. He doesn't seek attention, he seeks authority over the narrative. Three verbs like nails: exclude, possess, silence. The blow excludes the world. The blade possesses the story. The darkness silences the rest. Everything else, investigations included, is post production. If you're looking for a moral, there is no moral. There is a closed system fueled by isolation and repetition. If there is a lesson, it's for us. Stop believing that monsters are born from the supernatural or from brilliant minds. They are born from comfortable geographies, blindly efficient habits, fantasies of control allowed to grow without opposition. There, on the margins, when the city sleeps, he sets his stage and then turns it off. And we, if we want to understand him, must learn to read the margins, not the myth, the margin. This is the profile, not a dark fairy tale. A human algorithm that chooses spaces, times, and silences to erase the intimacy of others and replace it with his own. As long as the ritual holds, as long as the body holds, as long as the map protects him, then that's it. Not because he becomes good, but because he burns out. An ending that is not the end. The trails have different names, but they tell of the same hunger. I line them up plainly. The Sardinian Trail, Signa as a dirty prologue. The extended family, the lovers, the grudges that don't end at night. Men who trade suspicions and jealousies like knives. Everything comes back to the table when the city realizes that Bullet was no accident. It's the first alphabet: jealousy, countryside, long silences, .22 caliber, the farmer and his snack companions, the trial as theater, the town as the audience, convictions, acquittals, returns to the stage, confessions in fits and starts, portraits that can't withstand the light of day, yet remain hanging like nails, not the figure of an evil genius, but that of the outsider who knows where to strike. Justice speaks, geography listens, .22 caliber, the doctor who isn't there. Imagination wants a scalpel. Reality shows the hands of an obsessive hobbyist. Intermittent precision, control more than expertise. It's not an operating room, it's a private direction over the body. The idea is appealing because it reassures us. You need a special kind of monster to do evil, number. But all you really need is perseverance. .22 caliber, 7, the esoteric, the grand conspiracy. When fear can't find a door, it builds a cathedral. Symbols read like tarot cards, voices bouncing between bars and newspapers. It's a hypothesis that soothes anxiety, not the crime scene. Here, the ritual is individual, the echo collective. .22 caliber, the voyeurs, the guardians of the margins, those who know the laybys, the dirt roads, the hours of desire. Tired eyes that learn maps and habits, and sometimes provide what's needed: a place, a moment, a corridor, social facilitators, not directors. The scene becomes easy when the world becomes predictable. .22 caliber, the traveling weapon, a small Italian pistol and ammunition marked with a single letter. The theory goes, it changes hands, connects different men, writes the same sentence in different handwriting. The result is a chorus of suspicions that sound the same. Whether it travels or not, the faith in the ritual remains. .22 caliber, a single killer, multiple hands, one obsession against multiple executors, or a single executor carrying different seasons within. The scene shows consistency upon entry. Timing, geography. When the plot stalls, the method endures. Whether it's one or a few, the verb doesn't change. Neutralize, separate, possess. .22 caliber. The mail, the fragment sent as a calling card. It's not a show, it's a copyright. An author who wants to sign fear and impose his own caption on the investigators. It's the gesture that most betrays the need to control the narrative. .22 caliber. End of the leads. Beginning of the uncomfortable truth. None of these explains everything. Each one sheds light on an edge. The only stable center is the method, a grammar of spaces, times, and silences. And that pistol, small as an old vice, always there, comes to say the same phrase. 22 caliber.